Well, I'm a huge fan of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. So I thought it might be kind of fun, especially since it's the new year, to compose my own list of 7 habits for highly effective gardeners. Now, this isn't going to include things like you should compost or you should practice organically. All of those things I'm going to assume you know. These are behavioral practices that I have kind of learned over the years and that I'm constantly reminding myself of that help me be a more effective and successful gardener. So number 1 would be record, observe, and record. And today is a perfect example to do that. Now, historically in the past on New Year's Day, that would be the day that I would transfer any kind of information from my last year's garden calendar into my next year's garden calendar. That's hard for me to say. But I would record what to do when on the calendar, and then I would transfer it into the new calendar. Every time I would learn about a new chore, either through my reading or through talking to other people, I would record it, what to do when. So just a paper calendar or something like this is a wonderful way, I think, to do that and to record things that you're observing. For example, when the first finch appeared, or when the first rose appeared, things of that kind of nature. That's important to record, but also what to do when. So that is the first thing, is to record, observe, record. Now, this calendar is actually one that I composed myself. It's got a list of things, what to do when. You can get this off of Zazzle. I normally buy mine when they go on sale, but this is a good option. Now, another option, once you start getting a little bit more wordy about it, would be a gardener's journal that is more like a book itself. So this is one of my favorite ones. This is from Lee's Valley Tools. It's a 10-year journal. It's leather bound. I absolutely love it. And what it does is enable you to compare each day 1 year to the next over a chronology of 10 years. So for example, this New Year's Day, I was able to record that on New Year's Day, we had a record snowfall here in Oklahoma City. We had 5 to 6 inches. I can compare that to previous years. In 2017, on January 2nd, it was 70 degrees. So I can kind of see the fluctuations that we have in the weather, not necessarily what to expect, but what might happen. So a good gardener is observant, and then they record what they observe. So that would be number 1. Let's move on to number 2. Well, this is a perfect example of my second habit, and that is not to procrastinate. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When you're out walking about your garden, and I do it every day regardless of the weather, I'm constantly looking, observing, and being watchful for any kind of potential problems. That way I can address them immediately or very quickly. Best not to procrastinate, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So in this instance, a perfect example of that is getting all of this heavy snow off of my boxwood hedge so it doesn't completely lose its form. Now, the other thing it tells me is that I'm going to plan for the future. I'm probably going to have to do some pretty heavy pruning on this boxwood to help it reestablish its form in the spring. So I will plan to fertilize, something that I don't normally do every year. So there you go. Number 2, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Make sure to plan and don't procrastinate. Be proactive in the garden. So when I say don't procrastinate, that's my number 3. Don't procrastinate. When you see something that needs to be done, it's so much easier to just do it immediately rather than have to come back and tackle it later. And I can see right here, I've got a perfect example of that. I've got some Poa annua grass coming up through these bricks. I can pull it out now. It won't get any larger. It won't set seed. I can take care of it right now. Very, very timely. Do it when you see it to the extent possible. Number 4, make it a habit to always have a pair of pruners or scissors or snippers, something right by your back door that you can just grab on your way out into the garden, because practically every day there's going to be something that needs to be deadheaded, a broken branch, or something that needs to be addressed. And then always have some kind of receptacle, whether it's a basket or a bucket or some such, any kind of container that you can kind of have readily at hand to toss any of those weeds that you just pulled out of the garden because you didn't procrastinate. Well, number 5 is a hard one because it's constantly changing. Climate change has made sure of that. And that's working with and not against Mother Nature. But Mother Nature is having a hard time making up her mind these days. But to the extent possible, don't plant things that are outside of your gardening zone. If you have really acidic soil, don't plant something that likes alkaline conditions, or vice versa. In other words, find out what Mother Nature wants to grow in your garden, and hand in hand see what you can do together. Now, number 6 might be a habit of highly successful garden designers or highly effective garden designers, and that is think about the end in mind. So as I was planting my tulips this fall, I really wanted to create the end result of almost a river or a stream of tulips that started in the front near the street and then wafted its way all the way to the back. So I kept that end goal, that end effect in mind as I was planting those individual bunches of tulips. Something else that I thought about was that I wanted to make sure that this golden feverfew was in bloom at the same time that those tulips are, so I made sure that I had seedlings that would be mature in place and in flush when those tulips were in bloom. It required a little bit of planning, but it was because I kept the end in mind as I was doing so. Now, number 7 will test the mettle of a true gardener, and that is, do you garden in 4 seasons, or are you a fair weather gardener? You'll only be out there when the temperatures are just lovely and the sky is beautiful and the day is sunny. If you are a true gardener, you're out there on days like today, whether it's -2 or it's 102. You care about your garden, and you garden and appreciate it in all 4 seasons.